Hi everyone, my name is Krzysztof Kuczynski, I'm from Poland, and I would like to show you how I made my private project between buildings, which was to be a test of displacement in V-Ray for SketchUp. I knew it would be troublesome because of memory limitation of SketchUp, especially in close-ups where I wanted to reach a large resolution render with a lot of displacement. I found a few dependencies that might be of interest to some users of V-Ray for SketchUp, and I will show it to you later. The first part, inspiration. I really like the mood in New York City tenement, color, lighting, in tight housing, materials and architecture in itself. And here comes the brick, which was to be the subject of my exercise of Fury in SketchUp. Okay, now I will open my scene, the textured version. Okay, here it is. As you can see, it's very simple, pretty basic. I will turn on textures, lighting. As you can see, the lighting is very simple from SketchUp, directly from SketchUp. And the objects, the wooden window, steel frame, stone ledges, textured and mapped separately, the fire escapes, air conditioners. Next, the t-shirt, simple holes in the wall at the point of attachment of the stairs, the cables and the broken cables, the curtains, a few types of them, and of course at the end the shoes. Because of simplicity of this scene, I let myself to add a few details that are not visible at the first glance, but it affects the final result. By that I mean at the edge rounding, objects, welds on the handrails and columns, division structure on the window frame, and so on. In addition, I wanted to simulate a broken cable, which surely no one paid any attention in the final render, including me, because I knew that kind of details are not too visible, but that affects the final perception of the image, which is very important in my opinion, and I'm trying always this to remember, as well as randomize of repeated objects a little. Nothing costs and it looks more natural. To illuminate this scene, I used V-Ray Sun with pretty basic settings. To simulate shadows on elevation, I used 2 high boxes at enough distance to achieve some blue shadows without changing settings in V-Ray SketchUp. However, the reflections in the windows are made from the projected photo, which is in the front of the model. When everything was modeled, came time for texturing. Each object was textured in a separate file and then replaced back in the main model. I mapped textures the easiest way I could. The whole scene is textured manually by SketchUp texture position option from the context menu. Then I was setting up the shaders, maps, and so on. After all, material of the brick looked this way. The fuse texture map is simply previously adjusted in Photoshop. Some color corrections, stuff like that. Nothing more. No changes at all. Reflection map is of course Fresnel. And map it the next texture, which is the same but the grayscale version. Also adjusted previously in Photoshop, IR 1.8. Here I'm left glossiness and reflection to 1.0 and change the texture mapping in reflection glossiness to the same specular map, displacement 0.45, and map of course the bump map, displacement map. also adjusted before in Photoshop for my needs. And one thing important is to keep continuously tick on. Max subdiff edge length, you can adjust what you want in that place. The rest of materials are pretty basic. Every material have the Fresnel reflections, but with different multipliers and values. Let's go to setup. I will show you my V-Ray settings. Global switches, everything is default. And the system, I've changed the dynamic memory limit to 700 for my needs. The camera, well, we have to wait. SketchUp is auto-saving. Camera I'm using is physical camera. I like the values I can play with shutter speed, field speed, ISO, and white balance to control my exposure. As an environment, I have mapped the text sky with sunlight. Everything is standard, but turbidity I've changed for this render to 0, intensity 4.0, and subdiff 24. That's all. My background color, of course, is the same. Image sampler adapted DMC 1.8, minimum maximum. Anti-aliasing filter, I'm using area 1.5 DMC. Everything is normal, but subdiff multiplying I have a little bit higher, 1.2. Color mapping I'm using is Reinhardt. I like to have control of the bright multiplier of my burnout places in the render. Frame buffer channels I'm using for this render is diffuse, reflection, fraction, specular, lighting, GI, rough light, render ID, material ID, zip depth, and made shadow. Zip depth value white, of course, I've changed. Output for this render was 4000 height, 4800 is white. Indirect illumination, I'm using ambient occlusion for regular RGB output with a little radius and amount. Irradiance map is -5, minimum max -3. DMC is standard, casting is off, and displacement override on is turned off. So that's all for my settings for RGB rough output render. Now I will show you my settings for my ambient occlusion path. More important than the other settings were channels for me. Mainly thanks to them I was able to adjust the shadows, reflections, colors, and every detail in the raw output of my render. I treat as a channel also ambient occlusion path. I like to have a few ambient occlusion images, so I rendered it in few variants of the settings and lighting. I use a copy of the master file to be able to remove material from the whole scene to speed up a little parsing time. As you can see here, nothing left. Then I'm do changes in settings. I will show you which settings I've changed. Global switches is of course override materials tick on, override material color 100% white. The system is the same, dynamic memory limit 700, camera the same, still camera, environment, and I'm playing with these values. Of course, background color is now 100% white without any text mapping. For one pass ambient occlusion, I'm using a regular V-Ray Sun mapping type. I will show you why. This is a really nice effect, and you can really fine to blend it in Photoshop after in post-production. but of course for regular ambient occlusion I'm changing this to mapping and turning off and changing the value. Image sampler is the same, minimum 1.8. DMC sampler, adaptive amount, everything is the same. Color mapping, I've changed here bright multiplier 0.8. And now I'm rendering without any channels. Output can be a half size of the final resolution rough output render. Indirect illumination, and here you are playing with the values. Everything what you want to reach your goal of your desired ambient occlusion path. Irradiance map the same. I'm using as a secondary engine here light cache because it's faster, and the rest is the same. So that's how my settings for ambient occlusion path looks like, and there are my ambient occlusion passes. There is a stronger, higher amount. This is the higher radius, and this is the higher radius with a lower amount, and this is blended with text sky. So this is everything about ambient occlusion which I used. And now I would like to show you a trick to avoid SketchUp running out of memory when rendering a lot of displacement. I will open the file with a simple scene which I made for you before. This is very simple. This is few surfaces and the group with displacement material with the same material which I'm used for my renderings with a higher amount of displacement. Everything else is the same, as you can see in the preview. Is the same material, and the options are pretty the same. Global switches, everything the same. System, the night memory here is 500. This is because we are going to render with a in lower resolution. And camera, still camera environment is the same. Sunlight system, image sampler, adaptive DMC. DMC sampler, standard default values, color mapping the same, points channels without, output is a lower resolution, indirect illumination, ambient occlusion for sharpener displacement. For you will notice something curious. And what will happen when we hit render? This is basic scene, but watch what is going here. The CPU usage is at the level of 35, 43 and drops down often to 25 and so on. I paused the render here, and then this is the ending stage of rendering, and as you see, the problem is still there. The CPU usage is at level of 45, 30, something like that. And as you zoom in, you can see some scattering on the surface of displacement. This is something weird. In few moments I will show you how to fix that. Let's see how long it took to render this. 14 minutes and 4.7 seconds. This is terribly long in this resolution. And the second file is bricks with the grid. This is the same scene with exactly the same settings of material and V-Ray settings. And I will tell you what the problem is. The problem is to render the image in a high resolution with displacement, because SketchUp is limited to 4 GB of memory. Even with the option to render to file, preview mode, he ran out of memory. If you are rendering large areas of displacement, dynamic memory parameter is quite important, but in combination with 4 GB memory, not much we can do. I will show you the example. If you are rendering large surfaces, that what you need is to split into smaller ones. This is because the performance drops dramatically when it comes to the dynamic allocation of memory to each thread of your processor when you're rendering close-ups to the surface of displacement. So, as you can see, the settings, they are all the same as before. And let's see what happened when I'm hit render again. It will be a little bit longer parsing time now because of more of faces in SketchUp, but it doesn't matter. Just see what happened now. Okay, it started, and look at CPU usage. It is going up to the 100%. And that's all. The final result is clean, without any scattering of the displacement map. And this is it, what we need. And see, the render time is only 2 minutes 47 seconds with exactly the same settings, exactly the same material. Only one thing changed, that was the grid in the surface of displacement. I will save it to show you difference again. This is without the grid, with a scattering or whatever it is. 40 minutes, and with a grid is clean, is right, is good, and only 2 minutes and 47 seconds. And this is it. This is pretty much everything about my settings and about this technique with a grid, which I used in my render to avoid running out of the memory. So what left to do is to post-processing the rough output, which I always save as XR with all channels ready. And I will show you a little bit of what I'm doing in Photoshop in my with my renders. These are the same layers which I selected describing settings, but now I wanted to mark how they are important to someone who has not benefited from them yet. It is one of the most powerful tools to mask all the picture elements, just to be able to adjust those elements to your needs. In my opinion, the most important thing in the whole process of making the visualization is creative thinking about the possibilities offered us by the tools we are used to create them, and fit these tools to our needs and and way we work. As you can see, with little obstinately, you can do something really interesting even in SketchUp. With this project, from the beginning, I knew how I wanted to look like the final result. And using V-Ray for SketchUp in few steps, I was able to achieve picture from my imagination. And I also hope you like it just like I do. Finally, I want to thank Chaos Group for the opportunity to do this film, which was a pleasant experience for me. Thanks for watching.